everybody, this is Terry from True Motion. Today we'd like to talk to you a little bit about doing too much spin, or if you're a cyclist and you suffer from low back pain. We're going to go over some tips and some strategies to help you relieve that back pain and maybe change your training approach just a little bit. Alright, first thing I want to talk about is why your back hurts, or what is actually happening to your body when you do a repetitive movement over and over again. We're going to talk about what's called the SAID principle, specific adaptation to the imposed demand. So whatever you do, whatever you think, whatever you feel all the time, your body and your brain is going to adapt to that. What we're talking about today is cycling and doing spin a little bit too much. Some problems that can occur is low back pain. Among many other things, it can cause pain just about anywhere in the body. The way it works is if you're constantly stuck in hip flexion and you're always practicing being in this position, your hip flexors will become shorter and shorter over time. If you ever noticed in a spin class when everybody walks out and you'll see about 5-10 people, they're all kind of walking like this. And the sad part about it is they're actually getting better at doing that because that's what they're practicing all the time. Every morning at 6 a.m. they do their spin class. They don't open up this area again. It stays closed throughout the day. Then they put their heels on, and that just reinforces the movement pattern, okay? So what we're going to show you today is a little hip opener, and I'm going to do it from a brain-based perspective, meaning that your brain pays attention more to movement. So that's what we're going to focus on. You're going to come down on one knee. You've probably seen this dress before, but this is a little hip flexor opener. You can do it after every class, or if you're a cyclist, try to do this as much as possible to keep this area open. If you don't keep it open, once again your hip flexors will become shorter and shorter because that is what you are practicing. So we're going to come down on one knee here. You're going to squeeze your left butt cheek or your glute. You're going to squeeze, and that's going to open up this area right here. Now what you're going to do is you're going to practice just doing small little circles, keeping that glute nice and tight, opening up this area right here. You can do this for about 30 seconds and then give it a break. Do about 3 sets of those.
Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Bender, and here to talk to you a little bit more about some of the issues that we see from prolonged cycling. So one of the main things that you see with cyclists who aren't necessarily taking the best care of themselves is a lot of low back pain and hip pain. A lot of overuse in the hip flexors themselves can lead to wear and tear of the actual joint if it's not taken care of properly. But what I want to focus on right now is the actual issues that arise from not having your shoulders or neck in the right position for a long period of time. So when you're on a bike, typically most people you see will be rolling their shoulders forward in order to hold those handlebars. And again, when you're on a bike, you're on the bike for quite a long period of time, so as you're in that position for a while, you can start to get a lot of tension up in the first rib, the clavicle, and then the associated musculature of the area. So it's really important that you make sure that you bring your shoulders down and back and keep the clavicle, the clavicular area open, and try to utilize the muscles on the back side of your body and the lower portion of the shoulder blade versus putting everything into the anterior portion of your shoulder. So one thing that I like to recommend to cyclists before and after you get on the bike, it's really important to really stretch this area out before you may be bringing your shoulders in. So what I like to do is to train you to rotate your arm out. Basically, you want to rotate your thumb away from your body, extend your arm out and away from your core, and then slightly rotate your head over to the side, and you should feel a nice solid pull going on through this area. So try to do that before and after every time you ride your bike. And then also a good exercise that you can do to help to strengthen that shoulder and keep it reinforced in external rotation is to get a resistance band. I've just got mine anchored to the door right here. But to get that resistance band nice and stable, and then bring your elbow down to the side, and what you should do is just slowly rotate your arm out and feel that your shoulder isn't elevating up here. You shouldn't feel tension in the upper traps. And just bring that back to the center. Maybe just do that again. Rotate back. Be sure not to hyperextend your back while you're doing this either. And again, this is just to help to reinforce and stabilize that shoulder, so when you're on your bike, you're not going to be having the tendency to roll forward. It's going to be much easier to keep your shoulder down and in this position.
Hey guys, Jeremy here. So I know we're talking about the SAID principle, and while this is kind of a core component of most training programs, it's crucial to understand or to reiterate how our body responds to stress. So what I want to go over today is basically a release for a lot of that visceral tension, a lot of the tension that is created from cycling. Again, it's a really important thing to consider our biological characteristics. We are bipedal locomotors, so we walk on 2 feet. There are a lot of sports, martial arts, combat. There are a lot of different aspects of our culture that have been developed from our biological evolution. Cycling is just one of those things where our biology has just not caught up to yet. So it's really important to consider the repercussions that this type of activity is going to place on us. Again, going back to the SAID principle, going back to the fact that we are wired for survival and not necessarily performance, it's crucial to understand a lot of the that tension that's going to be placed not just in the hips, but pretty much everywhere else up the kinetic chain. Okay, so I might be inclined to go with an exercise recommendation to help undo some of that damage that cycling may cause. However, truth be told, there are a lot of different exercises that could benefit a person, and we'll have a lot of videos that incorporate those benefits. One might be just doing a basic squat, developing power from the ground up through that posterior chain, which is the hamstrings and the glutes, and developing it in conjunction with thoracic extension. Those are 2 primary components of exercise that are really not integrated with cycling, or at least not heavily incorporated. Beyond that, there are a lot of other concepts. As far as oscillating one arm with the opposite leg, there are a lot of different components to our movement and the way that we operate. But before I do that, it's crucial to understand how to alleviate the barriers that cycling causes. And one such barrier is going to be tension caused in these visceral tissues, specifically in this rectus abdominis, the shortening of these fibers, and how that plays into this exacerbated thoracic flexion. Okay, we need to undo both of those, and we need to teach our bodies and our brain that it has access to that range of motion. So the release that we're going to go over is basically just a medicine ball, an abdominal release. Sometimes I refer to this as a gut crush, where I basically place my belly button right on top of the ball, okay, and I just relax, okay, and I just work on compressing some of that visceral tissue, exhaling and releasing. This can also be a great feedback mechanism to de-stress. Exhale, collapse on top of the ball. When you inhale, don't take a big deep breath, but as you inhale, push that belly against the ball. Create a positive feedback mechanism for efficient respiratory mechanics. For time's sake, I'm not going to sit here for 2 to 5 minutes, which might be my initial recommendation to somebody, but it is crucial to start alleviating some of that tension. You could play around with it, maybe a little bit of rotation on top of that ball, get some of that tension out of the rectus abdominis. You might even be able to hit some of those oblique tissues, maybe even as deep as the psoas, very deep tissues that carry a lot of stress. From there, you can quickly go into the opposite pattern, which would be that thoracic flexion. So I would lay down on top of the ball, supporting my neck, exhaling, creating that core tension as I open up and go the opposite. Again, I'm not stressing the body in this context, but I am teaching the body and the brain that it does have this range of motion. And contrary to the opposite position, which is being stressed via that SAID principle during that cycling.
All right, guys, so big takeaway here is that always remember the SAID principle is in play, okay? You will always get good at exactly how you're moving. So if you're moving poorly, or if you're constantly doing something over and over and over, think about the tissues that you're using. Are they being overstimulated? If they are, there's a good chance they're gonna develop and manipulate themselves so they can get better at that specific movement. We don't want that to happen because it will cause pain, specifically in your lower back. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like, share it please, and go ahead and please use that exercise as much as you can, especially if you're a cyclist.
That's good.